talks, which mostly going to be Phil has some suggested changes. We're almost done with the further due diligence. We have another meeting. There's one individual who just hadn't filled out the columns, but that individual's promised us to look at it. Those last 2 columns left, and then we'll present all the further due diligence. I think next week. So it's interesting, so Gitcoin told us we raised like 1,100 bucks. There's only like 700 in the wallet, or even a little less than that. So we gotta figure, no, there's 383 in the wallet.
Do you know this crap? Like, this is what aggravates me about I shouldn't complain, it's a good thing. It's in your ZK wallet, and you don't know about that. It's not automatically transferred. You have to actually go and find it and trigger a transaction to your account. Otherwise, it's there for returns.
What?
Yeah.
What? How was I supposed to?
Oh, by the way, and it costs $4,000 to move it over.
Oh my gosh. What?
And I don't use ZK checkout because I'm like, the contributors are never going to get this. It's going to sit forever and they're not going to know about it. So I only use the standard checkout.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's news. Because Phil and I were trying to figure it out. We're like, some of these donations come after like round 9, or the most recent round ended, and but then they said that we got this amount for this round. That explains it.
So the $400 are then just the ones that directly donated, not via ZKZ?
If you use standard checkout, it goes to the wallet that you specify. If you use ZK checkout, it goes to whatever, an aggregate wallet that you have to then trigger a dispersal from. And there's sort of like no real notification that you're supposed to do that. Like maybe some people.
to raise some money from the community for the work we've been doing. And we are now going to be distributing that money to Michael, who has been building the website and has been paying those costs for the website. Awesome. So that was that. Further due diligence update. We are very close. So we only have 2 columns left that haven't been fully examined. One of our members, all the other members came back. We went through all the further due diligence work that they've done per column. That all went well. There's just one individual member who was assigned or volunteered for 2 columns who hasn't had a chance to get to those columns. He's assured us that will be done by our next further due diligence call on Monday. And then on next Wednesday, we'll be presenting with you with any suggested changes we might have to the individual answers because they are true or false. That being said, a very interesting conversation emerged in the further due diligence committee regarding a particular column and the question we are using to evaluate for that column. And specifically, it came from insight that Phil provided. And so I think Phil has some suggested changes for a column we are using for the further due diligence for this process that he wanted to bring to the table. So I'm gonna hand it over to Phil.
Yeah. So the question in question, is the one that is about the staking setup. And currently we are evaluating this by red. It is no answer, black box. Red is yellow is data center self-hosted, and green is let me pull this up. The exact wording. I need to open the sheet. I haven't it here. Dang. Something along those lines, decentralized servers in the hand of users or something like this. Let me get that. Currently it is decentralized servers in the hand of users. And so I thought a little bit more about this question and why does the staking setup in itself matters in the first place. And in my opinion, the main reason why we care about the staking setup is because of correlated failures, in the sense of correlated downtimes that might threaten the liveness of the beacon chain, or correlated slashings that might threaten the security. And also, it's not only from the perspective of the beacon chain health that correlated failures matters, but also from the user perspective, as through the ETH2 economics, they're basically the incentives are aligned, right? So in that sense, staking setup matters. And also in that sense, obviously, staking setup for staking providers matter, right? And so my proposal would be to take that idea of how well does the staking provider setup reduces the risk of correlated failures. And in my opinion, there are 2 aspects to it. The one that is currently slightly represented in this is the hosting location. But the other main point is the ETH2 client setups, client and the beacon node and the validator client. The validator client. And so my proposal would be to have 2 sub-criteria. The one would be the hosting locations, where a red would mean black box, no information, and maybe one single cloud provider. Yellow would mean multiple cloud providers set up, right, with failovers. And green would mean self-hosted, local data center, own servers, etc. And then for the second part would be ETH2 client setup, red would mean black box, no information, and only majority client. And that is a point of discussion, I think, because that might be hard to figure out. Currently, I think it would be Prism. Yellow would mean non-majority client, or a redundancy setup for the ETH2 beacon nodes. And green would mean a multi-client setup or the staking provider or network encourages client diversity. And then those two sub criterias would then result in an overall rating, which would be red if both are red, or there's one that is red and one is a weak yellow. Yellow would mean both yellow, or there's a yellow and a red plus, or a green, um, yellow would also mean there's a yellow and a bad, a green one, and green would mean green, or a bad yellow, a good yellow and a green, right? So that's the basic idea. And it would change a little bit the current rating. The main problem I have with the current one is that I think that the third point, decentralized servers in the hand of users, I don't think that there is any architecture that could fulfill this category, this green box actually. Because what does it actually mean? I don't know. Because at the end of the day, there's one entity running the staking node, right? And even if even in setups like, or in architectures like Rocket Pool, there's still one entity running the node, right? And we actually don't know for Rocket Pool, for example, how this distribution of node providers will look like. Might well turn out to be similar to the current network. It might be that 80% of the nodes are operated by exchanges, right? And whether that is something good or bad, we don't know yet. So it's hard to say that this is necessarily something that is better than self-hosted nodes, right? Yeah, so that's the basic idea. And in the spreadsheet, I've also commented on what the recommended changes would be if we move along with that.
I have a lot of differences with that. Well, I guess I have one primary difference. As I look forward to the future of staking, I'm looking to get staking out of the hands of pools and exchanges and into the hands of end users. When you talk about the threat of slashing or the threat of severe slashing, that's really an incentive to decentralize the network, so that the more decentralized the network is, the more node operators there are, the less impact any individual slashing has. And so right now, when we're looking at exchanges and we're looking at pools who are hosting thousands of validators in one setup, or maybe in 3 colos, and certainly they'll have SSV in the future, it still centralizes the pool of staking. When we say that there is no architecture to decentralize staking further, I feel like that's a mistake or a misunderstanding, because there is existing architecture to decentralize the opportunity for staking even further. Whether or not people take it is up to them, but with the pool that we're talking about, that trustless, decentralized, and open source, any user who would currently stake solo or who might stake with an exchange has the opportunity to put up 16 Ether and stake in a more decentralized way, which further democratizes the network. For our big picture, for our health of the beacon chain, I think that our most value comes from encouraging greater decentralization, by encouraging more nodes to be run in more places, by lowering the bar to access for individuals, rather than promoting this historical state. It's really a mining concept. It's a GPU mining concept of a silo that hosts all of the logic and everyone comes there. I think that that can be an antiquated system if we choose more decentralized systems moving forward.
Well, obviously, the nicest idea or the nicest architecture would be something like peer-to-peer pools and mining. If you compare it to that, right,
Mhm.
where everyone still runs their own node, but the pool reduces the variance for each of the miners, right, and each one gets a split of the rewards according to their work. But when it comes to current architectures that are possible, it is still that there is one entity running the node, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you're having a network where funds are distributed to different node operators, because at the end of the day there is a node operator, and until we have SSVs, that doesn't change. And if that network even incentivizes current node providers or current uh, staking providers to use that as well, then it might as well be that it doesn't really change the current distribution of stakers in the network, right?
You keep saying that there's one node operator,
Right.
but in the case of Rocket Pool, there is not one node operator. There are as
Well,
many node operators who launch smart pool nodes. So
just
there
look
are
at
likely to
from
be
the
thousands of node
standpoint.
operators.
Just look at from the standpoint who is owning the signing key, and there's one entity, and that
No,
entity.
that's a misunderstanding of
Yes,
the architecture.
no, there's one entity holding the signing key, right? Um,
You,
someone
you mean one, the
signing key.
smart node operator holds this, but
Yeah,
not.
of course.
So we should clarify. Like I don't want to disagree. I just want to understand. Uh, when you say it's one entity holding the signing key, it's not one entity holding all of the signing keys. It's
No, of course.
which is the case of a traditional pool model.
Yes.
It is one entity holds the signing key, and there may be thousands of entities holding thousands of signing keys.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm just looking at that specific for that specific question. I'm not looking necessarily for the question of who holds the keys, right? That would be a totally different topic, right? But just looking from the perspective of where is the node running, so location and or hosting provider, and what setup is it running, like from the perspective of an Ethereum 2 client, then yes, something like Rocket Pool encourages client diversity, and that is great. And that would also fall into this one sub-criteria as most likely a green. But on the other hand, we don't know where the nodes, for example, are running, right? It might as well be that the easiest way and for most of the users is just to run it on AWS, and we don't know that. And that might be something also to consider, because if everyone is running on AWS, then a correlated downtime might threaten liveness on of the beacon chain. I don't want to be extremely specific about one architecture in this general category, and I feel like the way we're rating it right now is pushing it towards one specific architecture.
Well, what you might say is that it's pushing it toward one specific pool. The ultimate goal is that
one specific pool. Yeah, there are others which have a similar vision, which aren't implemented the full way yet.
My concern is that we say this isn't being done enough, so we shouldn't reach for it. And what I believe is more pools should follow this model, and our opportunity to encourage them comes through this type of question. To say, if we say, well, everyone's doing it this way, so that's the scale we have to use. I would say we have an ideal in mind, and that is where we should set our standard, and everything should flow from that. Because if we do not encourage staking pools to come closer to customers, and instead we say, do what you're going to do and we will come to you, then I feel like we're not really serving the community. Another quick point I would like to make is, it's not equivalent to say we do not know how Rocket Pool smart nodes are operating, therefore they are a black box and equivalent to staking pools, because we know that staking pools are operating for the most part in a centralized context. At least Rocket Pool gives the opportunity for decentralization, whether or not that's actualized. And I'd like to back up and say, I use Rocket Pool because it is the good example. I am literally begging other pools, other providers to develop competing products in the same space. Because if they're the only provider that is reaching for those standards, then we're doing it wrong. Sorry, I get passionate.
But I do want to I do want to throw some weight on like what Phil is saying here, because it is a legitimate sort of point that he's making. I do see where you're coming from, Superfizz, in that like there's an bigger opportunity, for example, for Rocket Pool to have a more diverse set of probable region, nodes operating in very diverse regions compared to us. But like as an example, right? Like I'm really just taking a very rough example here, but like what if we suddenly like decide to use various regions for our nodes, and then it just so happens, it's just a very off-edge example, but what if it so happens that all the Rocket Pool nodes are all hosted in like the US region, the AWS North America region? It's a possibility, and I think this is what Phil is trying to allude to, in that how would you, in that sort of case, which is possible, how would you rate that, basically?
There are metrics. There's actually some kind of map somewhere that shows where Rocket Pool nodes are being operated. So this is interesting, and I want to put it to the front because it's something that has been on my mind. It is literally Rocket Pool versus other pools. And I hold Rocket Pool tokens. I am invested in the ecosystem. But I'm invested in the ecosystem because after having tasted the Kool-Aid, I believe it is a far superior model of staking. And we're doing kind of this, we can't know everything about Rocket Pool, therefore it is a black box. And I'd like to back up from
that's
that.
That's not my point, right?
Yeah, I don't think
not...
we're saying it's a black box at all. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid of us stepping away from the greater goals in order to accommodate what we have now. That's exactly. Okay. And so I can relax after saying this. I don't want to step away from high goals of trustlessness, decentralization, and open source in order to say, let's stick with what we have now and do our best with it. And with that, with that sentiment out there, then I can relax and trust you all to make good choices.
But just coming back to your argument that we should set high goals for staking providers, and so we should put the green on, that should be something everyone should strive towards. In my opinion, that wouldn't be an architecture as currently Rocket Pool is considering using in future, but rather something like an SSV setup. Because for a SSV setup, you have actually multiple entities running beacon chains, or you can have multiple entities running beacon nodes, and validators, right? that is something that really decentralizes and increases robustness.
Yeah, and
Because
these are
then you
questions
also
that-
have the signing part, the actual part where where an entity takes part in the consensus process, and also in supporting liveness, right, of the network. You have that part decentralized, and not only in the sense that the funds are distributed amongst multiple entities where we don't know who the entities are.
Yeah, so I think SSV is a great thing to bring into the conversation, but using SSV does not by nature decentralize a network. If one operator
It's
has
a tool.
7 nodes and they are all controlled by that operator, and they use a 4 of 7 and they're using SSV, we then do not say that they are decentralizing the network, because they're still
It's a tool that you can build architectures which also decentralize the aspect of who's running the node and who's operating the node, right? Who's owning holding the signing process.
This is an exciting conversation. I think it's one that we should have after I've had a beer. I mean, I get maybe a little too passionate, and there are definitely a lot of benefits to SSV. I don't know. I'm willing to be open to modifying the rubric as long as our ultimate goals are something like open source, decentralized, and trustless. If we're moving toward those things, then I don't honestly, and we're really getting there, I don't care what they look like.
How about this? I just thought of like a better way of maybe posing the question here, rather than trying to determine the state of what is and what might be. How about if the question asks, does the staker, the delegator, have the choice? Right? Like as an example for Rocket Pool, right? Like yes, delegator, like it gets randomly assigned to like the node operator, but like there's a choice there, right? The choice in that the operator has the choice to diversify their clients, choose whatever region they want, whereas they wouldn't have that choice for some staking pools. This would also then bring up like players like blocks on a higher scale, because the user has a choice of where they want to host things. And then maybe that's a better way of trying to promote decentralization.
I'm intrigued by that. I'd like to think more about it. But I think it's a good general direction.
Which would also mean for Rocket Pool that there is no choice, right? You don't choose to stake with one entity, but you rather provide the funds and they're distributed to the node operators, which at the end of the day also, by the way, could mean trusted node operators.
But I think there might be an argument to be made to say that the node operators, I totally get you where you're coming from, Phil, too, because like you're the one who needs to like really come up with the recommendations here, and Rocket Pool seems just like so off, so like on the exception here compared to any of the staking pools that it's just so hard to put on the same scale.
That's why I feel like the current rating, right, as it is phrased, actually I don't think that it even fits Rocket Pool, but the wording suggests that something like Rocket Pool would fall in this third category, which I don't think is true, because there is decentralized servers in the hand of users. That's not the Rocket Pool architecture at all.
You keep saying that, but I feel like we have a difference there. I don't know why we're clashing. When you say Rocket Pool is not decentralized nodes in the hands of users, that's exactly how I might describe it.
Well,
am I mistaken?
I don't see it that way, right? Okay.
Where
because
do you see
at the end of the
being
day,
operated?
Pardon?
In Rocket Pool, where are the nodes operated?
By the node operators, which might be, as well as trusted node operator, might be you, me, might be exchanges.
Yeah, isn't that, to me, that seems like the goal. Is that not the goal? And I would like
Right,
to
but
say-
there's just one entity running the node. I mean that's the point.
But
It's not
okay,
the
so
network owning the node, right? It's or managing or running the node. It's just one entity running the one specific node. Of
and then
course,
the
there are
gains
many
and losses
nodes.
are decentralized,
Pardon?
similar to the Lido process. The gains and losses are socialized. So I'm not, as an end user, I benefit from decentralization, but I'm not
That
penalized.
doesn't really help much in terms of, that might be an incentive, but that doesn't really help much in terms of liveness or safety of the network, right?
I'm almost tempted to say that we should forbid the discussion of Rocket Pool and only focus on the actual goals, which are decentralization, trustlessness.
I
and
totally
open source.
agree. I totally agree that the point was that I felt that the third category, the green checkbox, was worded in a way that is just a Rocket Pool label.
Okay,
And that's
let's remove it and focus on. And I acknowledge that a lot of my awakening for what I see as an ideal system is birthed from some of the things that I've seen in Rocket Pool, and I won't lie and say, oh, I came up with it on my own, because I really, looked at their model. I was like, these are the things that we should be looking for. But I don't want to also set them as the gold standard, because they're not the gold standard. They're an example that I hope to grow from. So I'm very willing to change that question. Who am I? I'm just some dude. You have my vote to change the question if it is a Rocket Pool specific question, if we're changing it to something that focuses on open source trustlessness and decentralization.
And I think we're all on the same page there. So, what I'd suggest for next steps is maybe Phil and JK, you guys work on what the new question will be, or maybe Phil, you've already thought about that. And then you bring it back and we discuss that particular specific kind of proposal. We were changing it from this, we're changing it from that to that. This is why we're changing it, etc.
I don't know whether it's really about the question, but rather what kind of information are we getting from the answers, and how are we evaluating the answers, right? Because there is value in this question. Where are you running your nodes, and what clients are you using, and have you redundancy built in? This is that is a legitimate, and that's a legitimate question, and there's real important information in there. The question is, what kind of conclusions draw we from that, right?
All right, so maybe you're okay with the question, but you want our rating to change, our rating basis for the answers of those questions to change. And so maybe instead of, if you think the question is okay, you propose a new rating system for that evaluation process.
Right, which I've already put into further due diligence.
Yeah, which I understand, but what I'm asking for is maybe like, do we post it to the main Discord yet?
I don't. It is on the Discord, but on the further due diligence channel. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, all right. I could have done a better job organizing the process then. You're right, because I remember you posting that, and I remember reading it. So I'm assuming we all haven't had time to go through and look and analyze this further due diligence question change. Is that correct? I'm talking like.
Yep.
That's right. So maybe the best way to approach this is, you're right, I should have brought attention to this, Phil, or we should have brought more attention to this. Maybe the best way to approach this is, we've had a good discussion today. Phil has proposed a change in the evaluation methodology in the further due diligence channel, and we then discuss that potential change, hopefully asynchronously throughout the week, and then especially during our next call. What do we think about that?
That sounds good to me. Just please just ping us if no one is responsive. That's all I guess I would say.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just tag everyone who's here today. Phil, I don't need to tag you because it was your post. I just tagged y'all in the further due diligence. We should have tagged. That would have been a better process approach.
Yeah, or maybe I should have posted into a different channel, like the pool evaluation criteria channel or something.
Look, we're doing what we can. It's there, and I don't want us to read through it now because everyone's gonna have their own gut reactions and initial reactions, and I think it makes more sense to like read it and think about it. And that's what I need to do at least. I need to think about it a little bit more critically myself. I have read it, but I just need to think about it more. So I'd say that we read it, discuss in the Discord channel this week in the further due diligence channel, and then come back and basically say, do we agree with this change? Do we not agree with this change? Why do we not agree with it? Why do we agree with it next week?
And there might be just an idea. There might be another question we should ask in the sense that how many nodes are you operating, right? Or how many validators are you operating? And that goes more into the direction of what maybe Fizz is pointing towards, because correlated failures also it matters how many validators are you running with the same setup. And we don't ask that question right now, but it is important for correlated failures, because if your setup kind of has a flaw in there, then it matters whether 100 nodes validators go down, or 1,000 or 10,000 validators go down at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I also posted that question right this second in the Ethereum further due diligence. So now we are both going to be evaluating Phil's new question and the potential of adding a new question, which is how many validators are you running with the same setup? We all feeling good about this? Amazing.
Yeah, we're asking the hard questions.
Yeah. Well, and look, it's I think it's a real testament that we can have these sorts of discussions and kind of constructively move forward. And I appreciate everyone's insight and Supervision, you talk about passion being a bad thing. I think it's a very good thing. I'm also maybe I'm biased because I'm also very passionate when presenting my viewpoints, but I think it's a very good thing.
I wish that I was a better debater because I should apologize to Phil. I get heated and I'm not a good debater. I know Madison's a professional debater, but I end up just getting angry and like frustrated. And my true intention is to understand other viewpoints, but my reality becomes like just getting agitated. So it is something that I want to work on because my goal is to improve the health of the beacon chain. And I need to recognize that everyone here, everyone in Ethereum shares that goal, and that we're not on different teams. We are on the same team with opportunities to learn different things. So that's a good thing.
Awesome. Well, that's the only big topic we had to discuss. So now
sorry to interrupt. I actually have a second proposal to make. I don't know. It's a smaller one.
Go ahead.
But the proposal would be to delist all the staking providers which are not offering a service directly to the users on the overview page, and then list them. For example, the specific case is staking facilities and Chorus, which are only offering their services through Lido. And I would propose that we list or we link them on the Lido page, but not list them on the overview page.
What do you guys think about that? You did discuss that. I remember doing further due diligence. I agree. I'm pro. So all in favor? Aye. Aye. Majority right there. Just JK being the very vocal detractor there.
No, I just wanted to make one point on that putting them. So would that mean that they would still be like you would still be able to find detailed information on them?
Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All
It's
right,
just set under Lido, not on the overview page, but probably on Lido's individual page. Is that how you envisioned it, Phil?
Yes.
Yep, that makes sense.
I mean,
gotcha. Because
otherwise
this goes back to Phil's original point about, right, like you want to know the actual node operators maybe behind the pool itself, and so this would be a great way for people to understand the actual operator behind the pool, which was why I didn't want us to lose that information.
yes.
Awesome.
Aye for me too.
Easy proposal, right? That was a walk in the park. I'm not sweating anymore. All right. Anything else you guys want to cover before we adjourn? Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Hey, by the way, like everyone who's part of this core group that stuck around, it's I recognize, I'm sure everyone else in this group recognizes it's not this whole thing's not a walk in the park. And so, I really appreciate it. I think community really appreciates it. We had over 40 donors to our Gitcoin grant. And, I saw people like Ben Eddington and all sorts of major people within the Ethereum ecosystem recognizing the work we're doing. So it is very much appreciated. And I know it's been a very thankless job so far. So I want to make sure you're hearing it from me. I thank you at the very least. And I think we'll continue to get recognition for it as well.
So this is where I get to say thanks, Madison, for taking this ball of wax and running with it, because I don't know anyone else who could take such a nebulous project and just keep plodding forward week after week to develop it. And so I know that it's still the early stages. It feels like, we've been doing this a few months, but I'm optimistic that in 3 or 4 years that the EDDC will be an institution. And I sincerely believe that with your leadership, it's going to continue to grow and to develop into something positive. So you're the right guy, and I'm very happy that you're here doing the work.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, and let's have a great week.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
in particular, for this nice